Hi, I'm Colin, and today I'm going to show you how to build a raised paver patio. The first step to any hardscape project is going to be design. We always recommend that you use a piece of graph paper so you can utilize each square as a modular square foot in reference to your materials that you'll need. Since we're doing a raised patio today, we're going to need things like wall block, capstone, adhesive. We'll still need lots of more 3/4 minus gravel, bedding material, and also some joint sand. With all those things in mind, a nice design, you can pre-order all of your materials so that you have them nice and ready for you when you start your project. After you've drawn up your design, you can go on to step 2, which is going to be layout. We always recommend to use white marking paint when marking your layout because it is the only color that does not mean a utility. Before you do your excavation, you want to make sure you have a utility locate. They may get confused if they see any other color other than white. One of the nicest things about doing a raised patio, even though it's a lot more gravel, is that you only need to excavate a trench for your wall block. So all we have to do is mark a trench for our wall block with our marking paint, and then we can move on to the next step. We've painted all of our reference lines, so now we can move on to the next step, which is going to be getting it square and setting our grade. The first thing we're going to do is stretch a string across our foundation to establish straight. The way we do that is we get that string as close as we can to that foundation without touching it. Once you've achieved that, we're also going to be setting it to the reference for our grade. The finished grade is going to be where we want the top of our paving stones to be when we're done with the project. We're going to go about 1 inch below the siding for this particular project. Once we achieve that, we need 2 perpendicular reference lines for both the outsides of our walls and outsides of our pavers. We also need to set them for grade as well. So make a perpendicular intersecting line. We use a 3-4-5 triangle, and then we use a string line level to make it level with the first initial line, and then we're going to drop them both for grade. Once we achieve that, we have all of our grade reference lines up and our square reference lines up, all in one volley. So we've got all of our string lines up. We have string lines for reference of the top of our paving stones when we're done with the project, as well as square and straight. Now we know that with any retaining wall project we do, we need at least 4 inches of embedment or half of a wall block, as well as 6 inches of compacted gravel below that. So below this native soil here, we'll have about 10 inches of excavation. We're going to have a subsequent course to bring us to the right height that we want, as well as a capstone, which is again what this string line references here. So overall, we're going to have about 25 inches below the bottom of the string line as a reference for our excavation and this trench of this wall. The cool thing about raised patios is you don't have to excavate more than just the trench for the wall most times. If you have any sod or grass, you're going to want to remove that. But most of the time you can just start from virgin soil and dig just the trench for your wall block and build up from there. So we finished excavating our trench for our wall block at our desired depth and width. So now we have to bring in our gravel base and start setting our base course block. Okay, so we need at least 6 inches of compacted gravel. We're going to bring that in 2-inch lifts. We're going to be using these string lines as a reference, just like we did when we excavated. We're going to be measuring the difference for our 6 inches of gravel. Once we have that in there and it's nice and compact, we can start setting our wall blocks. Normally we set wall blocks level each way, side to side, front to back. And we'll be doing that for the front wall of this project, but because we want slope of our paving stones, the easiest thing to do is slope these side walls a little bit to that same grade. So you just use this string line, measure down from it to get that block to the right grade, just a little bit of slope. Once you've achieved that, you can start moving on to the next step. We've finished setting our base course of block, so now we can move on to the next step, which is going to be backfilling and stacking subsequent courses. The first thing we have to do is fill the cells of our blocks with gravel so that we can compact behind them. There's a natural subgrade here that we're going to want to compact just for good measure before we insert our geotextile. After the geotextile is there, we can continue to build up in 4-inch lifts of gravel at most, because that's what our compactor is rated for. But once we get to flush with this base course of block, we can go ahead and glue on our second course. The reason we're gluing it on, and it's going to be a straight up wall, is because it's just a short 2-block wall. If you're going to go substantially higher, something like 3 feet or more, we'd recommend using our Murata standard block, which has a lip. You'll notice this block has no lip, and we do like to utilize Sherbond flexible adhesive. After we've glued that second course, we can fill those cells with gravel and then continue backfilling and compacting in 4-inch lifts of gravel. So we've stacked our second course on here, we filled our cells, and we backfilled the wall. We've brought it up to the proper depth where we can move on to our bedding material for our paving stones, but before we do that, we're gonna put our capstones on first. The type of capstone we're using is Monaco coping. It's just a nice round bullnose product. When you're using Monaco coping, you do have to do a 4-cup miter in the corner, so it is easiest to start from the corner and work your way out. If you wanna know how to cut a miter corner, watch our video, how to cut a miter corner. Before you glue the caps on, make sure you clean off the blocks with a brush, broom, or blower. And then we like a good heat adhesive like Sherbond 20. It's flexible, it works really well. Throw that glue on there, throw your capstones down, and then you can move on to your next step. We finished gluing on all of our capstones. Now we can move on to step 8, which is screening our bedding material. The type of bedding material we're going to use is called washed quarter 10. It's a 1/4-inch crushed aggregate. It retains no moisture compared to traditional concrete sand, which we like to utilize here in the Pacific Northwest. You also want to use something 1-inch outside diameter. We have some 1-inch square tubing. You're perfectly fine to use some 1-inch outside diameter round metal tubing. Whatever works and is 1-inch in outside diameter is a proper tool to utilize. We're also using a screed board here, but a good flat 2x4 will do just the same. You're going to screed this out, and then you can move on to step 9, which is laying your paving stones. We screeded out our bedding material. We went ahead and pulled the rails out and filled the voids with more quarter 10. Now we can move on to step 9, which is laying our paving stones. We're using some marina stones today. They're just a 12x12 square paver, and we're gonna be doing the running bond. Because we already did our caps ahead of time, we're gonna make sure that everything is square one more time. And we're actually gonna lay from the center out. We're gonna lay from the end here and go towards the house to minimize as much cutting as possible. If you have to do any cuts in your project, make sure you watch our video, 6 ways to cut a paving stone, and we make it super simple for you. All you gotta do is take your stones, make a little center reference mark, and just start laying those out. Okay, so we finished laying our field of pavers. We just had a few cuts along the edges. Typically we'd have an edge restraint because this is a raised patio. We have our capstones here and they're glued. That is our edge restraint. So now we can move on to the final step, which is finishing our patio. We're gonna be plate compacting our stones. You'll notice we have a roller attachment on the bottom of our plate compactor. That's just to help reduce any of these stones from being broken because they're a larger format, and also reduces surface damage if they're a textured product. Then we're gonna bring in our joint sand. We typically like to overfill our sand joints. That way we can use the plate compactor one more time to compact and work that sand into those joints. Once we're done with that, we can blow and sweep it off, and we have a finished project.